More than 400 Ukrainian troops have crossed the Russian border appealing for sanctuary. It's the largest number of Ukrainian military personnel to lay down arms and enter Russia, but it's not the first time. RT's Maria Finoshna is at the checkpoint where the soldiers arrived.
On Sunday night, 438 Ukrainian military laid down their arms and crossed into Russia through Gukovo border checkpoint, looking for a shelter here. 180 of them have already gone back home, but 250 are still here in this tent camp in Russia's Rostov region. It was set up specially to embrace them. We were able to speak to some soldiers and officers here, and this is what they say about what happened and why.
We were encircled. We had no way out. So to keep the manpower safe, our commanders decided to escape to Russia. I think for no clear reason the Ukrainian population is destroying itself. Because on both sides, we and they are the same people.
We already hear reaction from officials in Kiev. They kind of justify their military's behavior, saying they were under shelling for a month, they were running out of ammunition and weapons, and they practically didn't have other choice, and the commanders took this decision to save the boys' lives.
We've been almost completely out of ammunition and fuel for the past 2 weeks. Even provisions ran out. I couldn't feed my people. They are worn out, not so much by the fighting, but rather by despair. The only help we got from Kiev were hang in there commands, and during the past week they didn't even get in touch with us, as if we were already dead. To save people, commanders decided to cross the Russian border. We've had to leave our equipment and weapons on the other side. Saving the people was our priority.
Actually, it's not for the first time that we see something like this happening. Just last weekend, we saw a dozen of Ukrainian military again, and last month, 40 others laying down their arms and crossing into Russia again and asking for shelter here. Some of them were explaining it, saying that they do not want to fight against their own people in eastern Ukraine. As you know, large-scale military operation, or how Kiev calls it, anti-terror operation in this part of the country still continues. Others were complaining about a very bad situation in the army and lack of ammunition, weapons and training. Maria Finoshna, RT from Rostov region.
Kiev denies that the soldiers who crossed into Russia on Monday asked for sanctuary. But retaining the manpower necessary for its operation in the east has not proved easy. Despite launching 3 recruitment drives since the start of the crackdown, Kiev's army is still struggling to fill its rank and file. Military analysts say the army needs over $11 billion to replace old weapons and machinery. But only a little under $800 million was allocated to the military from the state's reserve fund a couple of days ago. The soldiers are running out of food and have to rely on handouts. Here's a website set up by civil activists calling on people to donate food to the army. On top of that, Ukraine's leaders appear to be struggling to pay their soldiers. And just recently, the country's parliament introduced a military tax. Marina Kosareva takes a closer look at the state of the Ukrainian army.
They've been called up to serve their country, but with complaints of having to fire on their own people, diminishing supplies and poor living conditions, morale in the Ukrainian army seems to be hitting rock bottom. And it's not just poor equipment frustrating the troops, as many are forced to live on supplies sent from home.
We had to cut most of the bread from these 8 loaves. They only have a small edible part in the middle, but there are a lot of people here.
While others say they're being left to fend for themselves. Taking all that into account, it's hardly surprising that women in Ukraine are begging their loved ones to stay put. Mothers and wives of those who were going to be sent to the war zone held protests, rallies and strikes across the country in an effort to block the ongoing recruitment drive. And it's not only out of fear for their lives.
Кормиться мы, получается, мивиной. И детей 2-летних мивиной кормить, потому что у нас нет возможности.
Какие действия
Где? Да достало просто. 3 месяца, никаких действий нету. Сколько можно ждать еще? Сколько?
The Ukrainian army should have money to feed and equip their soldiers. They get extra cash from online fundraising campaigns, a special military tax, salaries cut, and from sales of a so-called separatist tiers mineral water. But it appears the proceeds don't always reach the soldiers.
As of August the 1st, we'll have nothing to pay the military.
Confrontations are now being reported in loyalist western regions as well, despite their earlier support for the crackdown in the east. This is what happened to one local government official when he tried to encourage men to join the army. Locals suggested he should go to the front line himself. Marina Koslova, RT.
Ukraine's budget is being drained by the military operation in the east. According to the country's defense ministry, it could be $2.5 billion short come the end of the year. Legal expert Alexander Makoris believes financial woes are Kiev's biggest difficulty right now.
The problem, it seems to me, that Kiev has is not so much lack of weapons, which is what presumably the West would provide, as the simple economic burden of moving tens of thousands of people into the eastern Ukraine and keeping them there. And at the same time, there are obviously major problems of command and control within the Ukrainian army itself. And I just don't see how all of that can be sorted out in a few weeks. Before the winter weather closes in.
Well, despite the desertion, Ukraine's defense minister says that Kiev troops are very close to victory over local militias, praising the progress that's been made in recent days. Now, Ukrainian forces are closing in on the resistance strongholds. The city of Donetsk, with a population of almost 1 million, is one of them. It's been under continued shelling for weeks now, with residential areas frequently coming under fire. Here are the latest pictures from Donetsk, which was heavily shelled over the course of the weekend. A school was damaged during the attack. Many family homes were also destroyed, and several parts of the city still have no electricity. Locals say there were no anti-government forces stationed in the area. And these pictures, also from the outskirts of Donetsk, appear to show Ukrainian tanks entering the city. We're also getting reports the Ukrainian army has started shelling in the region using multiple rocket launchers. Last month, CNN reported US intelligence sources saying that Ukraine is using heavy ballistic rockets against anti-government forces. The Pentagon is thought to have urged Kiev to exercise restraint, while Russia's foreign minister compared the plight of the people in eastern Ukraine to that of Palestinians in Gaza.
I hope that the international community, which is very concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, will, in the end, turn their eyes to southeast Ukraine, where the population suffers no less than the civilian population in Gaza, with just one difference. Israel has come under rocket fire from Gaza and had to respond to it, albeit disproportionately.
Many of the residents of Lugansk, which is another main target of Kiev's crackdown, say they are too scared to leave their homes. No one was inside this kindergarten when it was hit by rockets last weekend. The city hospital was also heavily damaged during the attack. Reports of civilians being killed are coming in on a near-daily basis as urban areas are increasingly targeted. Residents in Lugansk say a crowded shop came under fire in one of the latest attacks.
There was a crowd of 30 to 40 people standing outside. Then came a loud whistling noise and a flash. The explosion was just across the road, about 15 meters away. We opened the shop doors so everyone could hide. There were splinters all over the place. The shop windows and front is damaged, as you can see.
Meanwhile, a journalist with independent outlet Anna News and his driver have been wounded as they tried to get to another area that had previously been attacked. A shell exploded just a few meters from their car, leaving the two men badly injured. Here's what they had to say.
We went to the film site where shelling took place earlier. We saw some people at the bus stop, and the explosion took place just a few meters from our car. Our vehicle blocked most of the blast, so the civilians at the bus stop weren't killed. Shell fragments hit our vehicle, and 3 of them injured me.
We were just about to get out of the car when the blast happened. I was injured, but the doctors managed to extract all of the fragments. The area that was bombed was full of civilians. There was a shop very close by. Attacks like this happen every day here in Lugansk.